Technical difficulty. Had to restart the program. Can everybody hear me okay?
We'll give just a sec to...
And hopefully some more people will come in. I don't know about you folks, but it's starting to get warm here, and with that in mind, we actually might do much shorter live sessions for the next, what, 4 to 6 months because of how hot it is here. I think it's about 105 degrees today, or 105 degrees outside today here in the States anyway. I don't know if anybody's joining us from outside the country. We are starting to get warm here in Phoenix. It's about that time of year though. Just waiting to see who all, if anybody joins us.
Okay. All right, I think the mic is working. I'm on the chat, so if you guys have questions, go ahead and put them in and we will get them to Tim.
All right. So we have people in?
Yeah, we've got a handful on Facebook and
Okay.
a handful on YouTube already.
Okay. So today what we're going to talk about is chuck maintenance. A lot of people who turn, even if they're drilling out pen blanks on the lathe using a chuck, at some point they're going to need to do some chuck maintenance. And basically you should be cleaning your chuck anyway when you buy it. It's because when you receive it, it's going to be coated and packed in shipping grease, also called cosmoline. It gets really sticky, and you can get a lot of it off just by wiping it down, and but you're not going to get all of it off the chuck itself, and that will basically attract dust. Whether you're turning bowls, boxes, pens, or even using your lathe as a drilling operation, using your chuck to drill with, to hold your blanks anyway. So what I'm going to do is walk you through some basic maintenance steps to not only clean your chuck, but also to disassemble it and thoroughly clean it, and then reassemble it properly. There are a few things to keep in mind. It's not a difficult process, but you do need to be detailed and take your time with it. Don't ever get in a rush because you will have to lay out your jaws or the slides when you take them apart. You will need a couple things. One of the big things you'll need is what's called a set of C-clip or E-clip spring plier, or basically the pliers and removers. These are made by Channel Lock. These will allow you to not only remove the C-clips by doing a compression, but also removing other C-clips for doing an expansion. So these will allow you to switch back and forth. I love these. I'm not endorsing Channel Lock by any stretch of the imagination, but these have been really good for me. If you need to look it up by the number, it's the Channel Lock 927. All right.
So they said they can hear you now.
Okay, good.
A couple quick. We got Angie, Bruce, and John on YouTube.
Excellent. Hi, Bruce.
They're chit-chatting. You got Ricky up in Sholo. He said it's 73. I saw that fishing picture yesterday, Rick, so I'm a little jealous.
That's not nice, Rick.
Yeah, and then you've got Cody.
Hey, Cody.
Local Cody. Local Peter. Rick Sell, it's 46 in Virginia Beach. Hey, Rick, what's going on? And then, of course, Tony and Nikki.
Hey, Tony.
And Brick, who was sporting his new blue shirt earlier.
Woo-hoo!
So, I will now let you get back to it. I just wanted to let you know who was going on here. Again, if you guys have questions or need me to stop him and back him up, let me know.
Please, yeah.
And we'll go from there.
All right, so what I'm doing here is I'm just removing the jaws off the chuck here. All right, so when you receive a chuck, when you open your package, you're basically going to receive it like this. I'm using, as an example here, the Record Power SE3. It's very similar to the Nova G3 as far as the body size and the construction type. So those are some of the most common ones on the market. So that's why I'm using this one. A lot of chucks have a lot of similarities as far as the assembly slash disassembly process. And either way, you do want to make sure you're keeping track of how you are disassembling it. One of the first things I like to do is I do like to kind of soak it in denatured alcohol. Question. Okay.
Sorry, I was just going over.
No worries. So I'm going to be using this. I'm going to soak this in give it a quick bath in denatured alcohol. I prefer denatured alcohol because it evaporates quicker and it does not leave a residue. You can also use acetone, but I've just found that like mineral spirits and lacquer thinner, they tend to leave a little bit of an oily residue. I don't like that. Again, it's a matter of preference. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pour this in here. And that's probably more than enough. As you can see, or maybe you can't, take a look here. Right now, it's got enough to cover and get into the gears itself. So if we can do a front shot here real quick. It's basically about this deep right here, which is enough to cover the gears. If you have trouble figuring out what that is, it's usually right where the opening is, where you put your key for your scrolling key for that. I'm just going to let this soak for just a minute, get in there, work really well. And you can see that the denatured alcohol is already getting a little bit muddy, and that's just from the oil that's on there as well as the dust.
I could see that in the video.
Yeah.
Michael says, "What's up, Chuck?" I mean Tim.
Ah, is that Michael DeLauder?
Yeah. How'd you know?
How did I know? He's calling me Chuck instead of Tim now because well, for those of you who don't know, I might have an issue. They call it an issue because I have 23 Chucks. I have 13 record powers. I think I have 5 or 6 Novas and a couple others here. Let's set this out here.
Sounds like an addiction.
Yeah, maybe it is an addiction. So I'm just going to take this out here, let it drip. Okay. I'm just going to set this aside for a minute. I'm actually going to set it over here on the floor out of the way. Now, let's take a look here. For a top shot here, what I'm going to show you here is every one of these chucks has what's called a C-clip. And what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to find the reflection here. You should see right there in the reflection, you see those 2 little holes, that little that's on the tab sticking out? That is a C-clip. That's holding the gear, the scrolling gear in place. So what I want to do is I do want to use my C-clip pliers, and I want to use them on the expansion setting here. I'm going to reach in here, and this is what here. See, put it like this. I'm going to spread it like this, and we'll spread the key out. Can you see that? Okay, there we go. You can see the action there. Now I'll show you I'm going to flip the switch on it so you can actually see the other thing as I drop it. There you go. And as I do, after I flip the switch on it, you can see that I can actually do so if you have an internal C-clip, you can actually compress it a little bit to remove that. So that's just one of these cool things about this little lever here that does that switch.
Tim, to be able to do this, does somebody have to be really mechanically inclined, or is it pretty easy?
It's pretty easy. I never really considered myself to be super mechanically inclined. It's just when I was getting into this, wanted to learn how to do the steps. And part of the reason I learned how to do this is because I had a chuck that was getting really gummed up, and I wanted to make sure I knew how to clean it properly. And I think everybody in turning, and that does turn, should spend a little bit of time getting to know their chuck like this. Sometimes it does take a little bit because it is a strong clip. Okay, as you can see it coming out now. There we go. That's your C-clip. Like I said right there. Now, here's where you need to be careful. You do need to take the jaws out and put them back in the same order, in the same slots. So what you need to make sure that you're doing is that you are holding, I'm going to pick up the chuck here, and I'm holding all the jaws in place. And when I do this, what will happen is you'll see the gear drop out. There's your gear, right there. This is what the inside of your chuck gear looks like. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to arrange this chuck so that I have the number 1 jaw in front of me. I'm going to slide this out. Now, let me do this here so I can.
Overhead.
Got to do the overhead here. This is just so I know where they are. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my little jar or my container of the denatured alcohol. I have a little toothbrush here, and it's just a regular toothbrush. You can use a brass brush. I would not use anything harder than a brass brush because you do not want to score any of the machine parts or create any extra wear and tear on the piece. A brass is a good one because it is soft, but it will clean in there really well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dip this toothbrush. It's a 99-cent toothbrush from Walmart, so it's really easy. I'm going to get in here real quick. I'm holding my jaws where I want number 1. I'm just going to get in here, just like you when you're brushing your teeth. Just get in here.
Tim, we got a couple of relevant questions here,
Okay.
and relevant being the key word. Roper asked 23 chucks, how many lathes you got?
2 right now.
And then Brick says, sure, get gorilla hands to try to show it. A demo video.
Said the pot to the kettle, Mr. Gorilla Hands himself also. How you doing, Mike? How's your vacation? Are you back now?
No, that's funny.
Okay, so I'm holding where slot number 1 is for the jaw number 1. I'm just going to reach in here, make sure I have everything cleaned out. Do this.
I'm going to zoom this one out just a little bit so I
Okay.
can see what you're doing
Okay,
without being
sure.
so zoomed in.
Okay. Okay. There we can see what I'm doing a little bit. There we go.
Yeah.
So again, this is my number 1 slot, and I'm keeping that in the same place. I'm not rotating it around. Just reaching in here, kind of making sure I've got all grease, all sawdust that may have built up in here, kind of removed. And this is something I recommend for any, again, buying a brand new chuck. If you're not comfortable taking it apart, I would say at some point get there. That sounds a little crass on that, but you definitely do need to do that. But at the very least, what I would do is definitely soak it in like a denatured alcohol or an acetone. That way you can get it cleaned up, and you can remove some of that material and then use a dry lubricant. But we'll cross that bridge here. Now, I want you to take a look at this here. I'm going to hold this down this way. This is the inside gear. It's a little gummy here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my toothbrush that has some lacquer, some denatured alcohol on it. And I'm just going to get in here and I'm just going to clean it up a bit.
John wants to know if he ships his to you. Can you do it here for a cleaning?
John who?
John Kirsch.
Maybe. Maybe something we could discuss another time. Yeah. You can actually see in here, maybe you can't, but there's in here, there is buildup in here. So I'm just going to kind of wipe this out. And you're going to see more, this is the area that's going to be exposed more. This is going to be the underside of the chuck. So what I would do is I would just take some more of your denatured alcohol or your cleaner or your solvent, whatever it is you're using. Just clean out these gears. Part of the reason I like to use denatured alcohol or acetone for cleaning is that it works very well for one, but it also evaporates quickly. So you definitely can get some good results with it without spending a lot of time waiting for your rags to kind of dry out. So what I do is when I'm done with this, and I definitely recommend this if you're using denatured alcohol or any solvent for that matter, is definitely lay out your rags until they've done what's called flashing or evaporating, so that you don't have to worry about them catching fire. And by what that means is that don't just wad up your rags or your paper towels that you use with any solvent and just throw them in the trash. They will flash, they will get hot, and they will start a fire. There's been quite a few wood turners that have, I'm not saying from that purpose, but there's been quite a few wood turners that have lost shops to fire. Don't let your shop get burned down because of carelessness, for lack of a better term.
Michael says, what happens if you never clean your chuck?
As in roper, Mike Roper, or Delauder?
Delauder.
It just gets gummed up and it gets hard to use. I mean, you can blow out some, you can soak it up or soak it to kind of remove some, but ultimately at some point, it's a good idea to just take the time and get them and clean them out.
Roper says it's vital for safety.
It is.
Come back. I guess it's kind of like never changing the oil on your car.
Yeah. All machinery, all parts that you use for wood turning do need to be maintained. That's and these parts will be dry very soon.
You don't need a glove with that denatured alcohol?
If you are at all concerned about any absorption in your skin, I definitely would. I've got such calloused hands and scaly hands at this point. It doesn't really bother me. If I did this all day, every day, then yes, I would be wearing gloves. But since I'm not doing this very often, and this is not something you have to do very often, but if you feel like your chuck is not working the way it should, go for it. Clean it. And if you're at all concerned, definitely wear the gloves. Okay, so that's the hard part there, and I think we're ready to actually put it back together. So I've kept everything the way it should. We'll put jaw slide number 1 in. And actually you don't have to put them back in order as long as you've kept them in and are putting them back in the same place. I just kind of close them all down so it's even. Turn this over. Drop that in. And you'll feel the gears clicking in. So, right here. I've got that pushed back in there.
Come just a little this next to the show. There you go.
So I've got that pushed back in. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to put that C-clip back in. And all I need to do is I just need to get it spread wide enough to fit around this post here.
Question from Richard. Do you need to close the jaws all the way before you disassemble?
No, because when you disassemble, you're going to be sliding them out. You only need to put the jaws all the way back in when you're putting the gear back in, so that way it'll seat properly within the gear itself. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, Roper says it looks shiny and new. I was thinking the same thing. I was It looks like a new Chuck already. Just from that.
And all I'm doing is I'm just kind of pushing it down around the post here. And when I get all the way down, you'll hear it click into the ring, into the retention ring there. There we are. So here we are. I'm going to open this up. It's tight. It scrolls properly. All right, I would say that's good. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to lubricate this. I prefer to use a dry lubricant. Let me grab a drink of water here. And by a dry lubricant, there's a couple different things you can use. You can use a silicone, like a spray silicone. A lot of people use it for garage door openers or garage door casters, or the bearings on the wheels for the garage door.
I cut away while you drank.
Appreciate that. I've used dry lithium grease, and because lithium grease, while it's kind of a misnomer, it is very fluid, very viscous, but the lithium grease does not hold on to the grease as much as, or I'm sorry, hold on to the wood dust as much as you possibly, or as it can. Or you can use a silicone spray, lithium grease. WD-40, again, not promoting WD-40, they now have what's called a dry lubricant. So look for the normal yellow and blue WD-40 can, but there's a new one called WD-40 dry lubricant. It's in silver, and I've used that on a couple of my Chucks. It is a great little dry lubricant. It's perfect for doing that. Let's see here.
Do you lube the gear before you reassemble it?
You can, but you don't have to as well. What you can do is, we have this silicone spray here. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to kind of hold this. I'm going to kind of spray here. I'm going to rotate. And it's already working into the gears. It's not as squeaky anymore. I don't know if you can tell that.
What about graphite?
Graphite, honestly, I've never used it in a Chuck, but I think just it might not stay in the Chuck. Whereas the advantage of, especially when you turn it on, it may throw it just because of the centrifugal force. That's why I like the spray lubricants. It will stay a little bit more. So now I've got the slides all the way open. I'm going to just spray a little bit more in there. And I'm just going to work this back and forth a couple times. And I can already tell it's working really smooth here. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do here real quick is I'm just going to wipe it down, because as you can see, there is some of the spray on the outside here. Maybe you can't see. Look at this here. There's a little bit of spray here, so I'm just going to wipe it down real quick. Real easy to do. Now, I'm going to assemble and put the jaws back on the Chuck. And this is one of the things I try to tell people when they buy a Chuck. There's a certain way to put the jaws on your Chuck. So it is very important that you do this and do it properly. Each of the jaws is numbered, or each of the slides is numbered. Each of the jaws is numbered. I know that Nova does theirs as well. I believe all the other brands do number their jaws as well. As you can see, this is, again, this is a record power. This is the jaw number 3. You may not be able to see that. So I'm going to look for the number 3 slide. Okay. And this one says number 3 right here. So I'm going to put it on here. Now the thing I want you to notice, though, is when I go to put this on, I don't tighten it. It's in there finger tight, or it's barely in there. And I will explain why. And I do that for all the jaws.
Why do they have to be in order?
Because when they are machined as one solid piece of steel. And so when they are cut a certain way to match the gear pad or the layout. So they are machined specifically for that purpose. So they are intended to go on specific jaws. That's why they're numbered. If you don't put them in the right order, they will not center themselves properly. They may not sit properly on the slide. Like if you put number 4 and number 2, it may not sit properly. So you may get one side that's popped up. It may not sit all the way on the gear itself. Again, notice that I'm not tightening these all the way down. And I do recommend, I actually have, believe it or not, a cookie sheet that I have in my garage for doing things like this, for assembly. So if I drop the screws, I have them in the cookie tray. I don't lose them. Because how many times, I mean, we don't ever lose any of our screws into our piles of sawdust, do we? Never. All right, so I've got those all mounted on there, and they are all finger tight. So what I do here is I take the chuck key, and I tighten it all the way down. What this does is this centers all the jaws and gets them perfectly concentric. At this point, I will take my Allen key. I always exchange the L Allen key that comes out and go with a T-wrench Allen key. This is a 4mm for this. A lot of them that I've used are a 4mm Allen key. And then I start using, start tightening them down. I'll do 1 and 2, or 1 and 3, 2 and 4, kind of like a tire. I'll tighten the inside one. There, 2, and 4.
Can you move the silicone spray? It's blocking your turner's patch.
There we go. Is that better? Then I'm going to do the outside band. 1, 3, 2, 4. And I'd consider that to be tight. But if you always, at this point, since you've tightened them all concentrically like you would a spare tire on a car, I just kind of go through and do another twist just to make sure they're tight. I know somebody may ask about using an impact driver. Do not. It may not, the screws may not be able to handle that, and why would you want them that tight anyway? So. And there you go. If you feel like, because I did hear a couple little squeaks, what I might do also, I'm going to spray a little bit of silicone back here on the back side. And I'll work that around a little bit more. Ouch. Don't pinch the skin on your fingers. That's good. And then just take it in here and just kind of wipe out any excess. Now, yes, you are done as far as cleaning and assembling. What I would recommend doing at this point is putting it on your lathe and then spinning it up to speed, staying out of the way because there may be some residual loose lubricant on there. It will fling it. So you don't want that coming into your eyes or anything like that. Just stand back and once that's done, wipe it down and you are good to go.
Roper says don't over tighten any screw, no gorillas.
Exactly, even with my gorilla hands. Anybody have any other questions? Because usually this is, doing chuck maintenance is kind of a sticking point for a lot of folks when they're getting into purchasing a chuck and using a chuck, let alone the 23 that somebody with a sick mind like me has. What are your questions? Did I answer any of your questions? Or hopefully at least I demystified it for you.
Why would you need more than one chuck?
Honestly, I don't need as many as I have. I can probably get by with everything I do with maybe 6. I will be the first to admit I am very blessed with the number of chucks I have. I am saying very blessed. I've been able to demonstrate for several different manufacturers over the course of the years. And of course, when you're demonstrating for a manufacturer, a specific manufacturer, they don't want you to do a demonstration using one of their competitors' items. So a lot of times when I've gotten chucks, that's how I've been paid, is by merchandise, by equipment. So I find myself, and I know that I am very blessed with that. So that's the way I call it, and that's part of the reason why I have the sickness of how many chucks I have. I think I've paid for one chuck in the last 10 years. So, and I've been maybe 15 years. I've been turning for about 30 years now, and I've demonstrated for four different tool companies. In relation to that, so that's how I came to have so many chucks and how I kind of feed my sickness on that.
What are the most used chuck accessories?
Honestly, it really depends on what you're turning. There's not a pat answer for that. I use, believe it or not, the funny thing is every chuck you buy will, like for instance, like Nova and Record Power, you will get a set of standard 50 millimeter jaws. I use those quite a bit for everything I do. There's a couple exceptions where I have a couple sets of jaws that are 35 millimeters and one set of jaws on a mini chuck or micro chuck that's a 25 millimeter. So for the most part, sometimes I have duplicates, so I can leave the item in a chuck if I'm working on it, carving on it, staining or dyeing it. That way I can do that, and that's kind of where I consider myself to be fortunate in being able to do that. Any other questions?
You got a lot of kudos. People learned a lot.
Good.
Roper has a goal to get more chucks than you, so that's good.
Well, that's good. He already has more lathes than I have.
We sell chucks here, Roper. So.
I know he's itching for a Lathe Life T-shirt, but we may have to talk to him off screen or something about that.
Yeah, sure. I don't see any other questions.
Okay, so this video will be posted as a replay, not only on our Facebook page, but also on YouTube, both on Chad's channel, and we will be posting it on the Turner's TV, which is Turner's Warehouse TV station, which is on YouTube itself as well. We're starting to build up a little bit of a library there, and that's ultimately our goal. Hopefully you will have found this to be instructional, and if you have any questions, please revisit it. If you don't feel like your question has been answered, by all means, give us a call here at the store, and I'm happy to answer questions anytime.
Just tuning in, how often do you clean it?
It really just depends on the amount of work you're doing. If you find that your chuck is not operating, like it's hard to turn or hard to scroll the gears, start doing a couple things. Blow it out first off, and then just kind of scroll through quite a bit, and scroll it back and forth. That should help. If you get to the point where you're trying to scroll it, open and close it, when I say scroll, I mean opening and closing it. If you find that that's not working, try cleaning it out. You can use WD-40. Yes, it is a lubricant. I would not use that as your lubricant for your chuck because it will gum up quickly. But if you're using it to try to clean things out, that'll work. But I would blow it out and use a silicone or a drier lubricant before you do that. So it really just depends on what you're doing and how dusty it is. Usually when I take one of my chucks off the lathe, I will check it to see how dusty it is, if it is caked up with dust. Because there are times when I'm just turning all day and it gets gummed up. What I will do is I have a board next to my lathe. I'll sit there and just kind of bang it out. A lot of times that will just drop it right out. If that doesn't, blow it out and then try opening and closing your jaws, and that should help as well. If you feel like you've done all that and it's still not helping, then go through the process of disassembly and fully cleaning it and then reassembling.
That's all I got. No more questions.
Okay. I hope you found this informative. We do sell chucks here, the Record Power chucks here. If you have any questions, I probably have the most experience with them of anybody in the States. I've been demonstrating with Record Power for over 5 years now. And I'm happy to talk anytime. Again, feel free to check out our website, our YouTube, and our Facebook pages, and hope you found this informative. Hope you have a great rest of your day and a great weekend. Happy turning.
Awkward silence.